Okay. Okay, so we may start. Oh, this. So it's yeah. Okay, so today we have Takashi Ikegami from University of Tokyo, and yeah, I like to. He will give us a wonderful talk. So yeah, so now he is a professor at University of Tokyo. He got PhD in the University of Tokyo in physics. So his major is statistical physics. So then he did a postdoc in the Kyoto University and also Los Alamos National Laboratory in the United States. And then he got assistant professor job in Kobe University, then moved to after several years, he moved to University of Tokyo and he became full professor in 2008. So, and his main research, his lifetime work is toward artificial life. So in the early days, he worked on more simulation of the agents and evolution and those things, more computer oriented. But recently he working more also for the real things. So real things means that real biological materials, chemical things, real chemical things for the synthesizing the cells. And then also today, he talks about Android things. So LLM, large language model, and Android robot things. And then, but that is everything is toward kind of an artificial life. So synthesizing life-like things. So, and because of his the contribution more than 25 years, so 2021 he got the lifetime achievement from the International Society of Artificial Life. And in 2022, he got the best paper award for 10 years, not that year, 10 years. So that for the publication, so some publication in American Journal of American Chemical Society. That paper was published in 2007 about the oil and oil droplet things. So yeah, so and okay, so yeah, so please start.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction. So I'm very happy to be here, and then thank you very much for the opportunity to give a talk at OIS again. So I was in here last year for about 4 months, 5 months as a TSPP visiting scholar, and it was very interesting experiences. Today I'm going to talk about Ota. Ota is the name of my humanoid android, and then plus a large language model. So today what I wanted to talk about is my big surprise when I met large language model, right? ChatGPT. Well, I know there's a bunch of critiques about ChatGPT, but this is my second big surprise. The first one was when I simulated chaos by myself in a computer. I was so surprised because you cannot predict what's going on, right? And then I tried to print out all the parameters and data, and then the next day I went to my lab, and then printer was sort of there was a fire. so the staff was really angry with me. But that I remember. But this is the second time that I was so surprised when I was using my computer to see how ChatGPT is so strong and effective. Okay, so I really have. I would be very happy if I can share this my surprise and with this large language model with you guys. And today's work is basically with Takahide Yoshida. He's a master student, and he's really good at programming things, especially ChatGPT and then LangChain model, which I quite owe to his work today. And also Atsushi Matsumori is my postdoc, and he has been working with me for like more than 5 years now on doing experiment on Alta, the Android. Yes. And this one is a science grant that we got. So the author, first of all, so first 10 minutes, I briefly review what I did with Android. Okay, so this is a real one. So when was that 2016, I met Hiroshi Shiguro from Osaka University. Probably you guys know Hiroshi Shiguro. He made a Android of himself. such a crazy guy, right? Then I explained to him about artificial life. That's what Jun was kindly explained to me. So the artificial life is all about autonomy. So how to make autonomous behavior is all about artificial life. Of course, the other way to say it's artificial life is the theory about brain and evolution, right? So we don't know how the evolution is actually happening or not because it's too long time, right? And also the brain, how the brain works, we don't know it, right? Because even if we open it, we don't know what's going on. So the artificial life is try to make a model, generative model to understand evolution and brain. So that's what the artificial life is about, which is quite different from artificial intelligence, I think that's why. And then the 2016, I made, Hiroshi and I tried to use this Android. Then I put so many my programs into this Android to see how this autonomous behavior will, emerging from this Android. Right? That's what I did in 2016. And 2018, I noticed that Hiroshi didn't put any camera in his eyes, so I thought I was so shocked, So I put the camera in this Android so that the Android now can see the world. And then I used him to do conducting the orchestra, right? For this artificial life 2018, I organized the international conference of artificial life in Tokyo. Then I tried to welcome the people from all over the world, so that I tried to do this using Android as a robot conductor, which I thought was very successful. But that's only one day, before that day and after that day, it didn't work. So it was so miracle, but it was very nice. And then 2019 that we made the third one, which is Orta 3. So today's work is using Orta 3 and then how it can work, especially interacting with the human subject. So this is Orta 3, and then he has a camera in his eyes. And then we made a simple program to mimic human behavior, poses in front of him. So somebody is coming in front of him, so that the Orta tried to mimic the behavior. That's what I did. But as you see, it's not perfect, right? Because it's always propagated by the neural noise. So each axis that he has the 43 axis, and then it's always added by the neural noise, which is spike neurons, and then also Hebbian learning. So it's always changing the behavior in a micro scale. And then that's why the behavior is not perfect. But because this imperfectness is important for him to interact with a human being. So using a comparator model, I think it's initially introduced by Frith, that the basic blueprint of Orta is like this. So there's a goal that we gave him, right? Gave it to him, which is imitating a pose in front of him, right? And there's a desired state. A desired state is, of course, we cannot make it for the moment, right? So it's not imagined state, but it's given by human programmer. Then there's a controllers, and there's a visual input from a camera this time. So human poses is given to this controller, and then he using a predictor to whether his planning behavior is pretty much matching the images that he got from the camera. And if it's okay that he he executing this behavior so that movement is coming up, right? And then, but this behavior is also computed whether their behavior is good enough to the image that you see in front of him. Then it's good enough, then it executes. But it's not, then he's going to search in the memory. So there's a memory state. So he accumulated all the behavior that he did in the past, and then he tried to search whether there's a good behavior he did in previously, comparing with the one that he tried to do right now. So if he found there's a good behavior was already memorized, then he tried to use it to execute. So basically, this memory tank or the memory of the behavior is very important also, right? Not just behavior generated right now, but it's also the behavior memorized in the memory tank is quite important. Yes.
What kind of memory is it? How are the pictures stored?
Yeah. Well, I said it is a 43 axis, right? So it's a 43 vectors. It's aligned like in all the AI type of things. So it's a memory state so that you just exhaustive searching, then you can find. Okay. Yeah. Well, so this optical flow is a lattice optical flow. So in each part of the point that we calculated the optical flow point, right? Yeah, so everywhere, right? So that and then calculating the optical flow from the visual input, and then if the optical flow is similar, then we say that's okay. But it's very different. The optical flow is very activated right here, but the producing behavior is activated here. Then it's very different, right? But it's similar. Then we say it's okay. So it's but it's not perfect, but it's just yeah. But as you said, when Android is moves, and then the optical flow is perturbated a lot, right? So that we have to feedback not to go move. I mean, the finally that we did was lower the sampling rate that helps us to have a stable lattice optical flow point. But we can discuss that. But that's also the big problem that we had in this system. So that if you have any good idea, that would be very helpful. So basically, this is what we are doing here. And then I thought, internal simulations and then also the memory is very important for Android to interact with the human beings. Then when I did this, I tried to let Android to interact with Auto 2 and 3, interact with each other, try to mimic each other, right? Because the apparent fixed point is not moving, right? If the other one is not moving and the other one is not moving, right? So it's going to be a fixed point. Or maybe this is if there's a phase differences, then one guy is moving his hand, the other guy is moving his hand, and then moving down, and the other one is down. So it's a period 2 kind of behavior is also quite apparent stable fixed point, I think. So that's what happened when Android and Android interacting with each other. But when the Android is interacting with the human, but depend on what his nature of this subject. But its behavior is more interesting and complex, I think. Human is very important, once you want Android to learn a lot. Because it's not, falling down to a fixed point or a limit cycle, but it's more like, it's moving, almost eventually that changing a lot, right? It's not a limit cycle or periodic behavior, but it's more like a complex dynamics that you can observe here. Yes. No. So this guy must mimic him, and this guy is mimicking the other. Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things is that I also did this experiment, and I found it's so fun, right? So you cannot, stop doing this because it's so fun. So you really want to continue, interacting with him. And then the other interesting point is that I think even if it's nobody's there, that he tried to do something, right? Because he is retrieving from his memory and then do this, and then restore it again with some mutation or some noise added to your behavior, so that the memory is, changing in time. That's also quite important. Otherwise, you cannot make a new behavior, right? And the new behavior is coming from the memory storage, not from this, not from the other way. So so this is a bit complicated one, but this is a UMAP representing the behavior of the 43 component vector. Once you are interacting with, so red one is when there is it's memory based, and blue one is when it's just a direct imitation because the human is in front of you, so it's a direct imitation. But the red one is from the memory retrieval, right? So it's a half and half when the human is there. So it's sometimes you use memory, but sometimes you directly imitating the behavior. But once the human's gone and nobody's in front of you, you're just using a memory retrieval, and then because of retrieving behavior, that the behavior is changing in time, so that the new point within the same space of the UMAP, that those red points is scattered and then moving away, so that the new behavior is coming up when there's nobody, right? So then the next encounter with the human, the android can use the new memory space to mimic the behavior. Okay, so actually, the android's behavior against human and against other android, against human has more, diverse and rich behavior, but against the other android, it's more fixed point things. So I thought, okay, still humans' behavior is necessary to have a rich, complex behavior, even though android can interact with each other. But there's one thing that DeepMind people, using a chess program against himself, then it gets better and better, right? So it's not always the case. So I was thinking of the difference between the DeepMind chess program and then this Android versus Android cases. My expectation was the Android versus Android is generating rich and complex behavior. Then it's more interesting, I thought. But the fact is opposite. Android cannot increase its richness by just interacting with that Android. So now, this experiment was 2 to 3 years ago, but then I met this large language model. Right? Large language model is, of course, it stands for large language model. It's typically based on transformers. I don't know, I have time to explain transformer, but it's a multi-layer neural network, but it's feed-forward, not recurrent connections. So I think it's very much straightforward. And also, I think it's an important point is that there's a multiple attention points, so that attention is not just a single one-dimensional line, but it's many different attentions, occurring at the same time. And then also, most important thing is it's a huge database that this network runs, as you know. And then because of this huge network, huge memory, that this network can do much more than we expected, right? So in essence, as wrote here, the large language model understands context and can execute advanced natural language processing tasks. That's what that explains everywhere. Then, I was maybe this Elma network that was like 30 years ago that the people are working with it. So the element network is only like one hidden layer, which is a very simple one, right? But this one can extract syntax from the examples of the sentences, which people are very surprised. Right? For example, like if you put right bunch of sentences, then when you open up, then see the patterns on the latent space that you can see it's naturally verbs and nouns are separated. And then also life and non-life nouns are separated. And then once you do hierarchical analysis, then you can find those patterns classified in different ways. So that even if you just put corpuses into the network, the syntax is emerging from it, right? Syntax is not just given from without, but our understanding is that the syntax is an emergent phenomena from the corpus. However, of course, this one is a limited, and then also you cannot find some complex sentences or expression from it. But as I said, the notion is that maybe Chomsky is not right because its syntax shouldn't be prepared separately, but syntax is a part of corpus lexicon. That's what I understood when I studied element network. But then there is the paper came out, which is attention is all you need, which is the transformer architecture that you can learn with. But you can see everywhere that this transformers architecture, which is beautiful, and then the important thing is in order to fill in what's this the word is correlated with other words within the sentences, right? So the point is, I think, correlation is not only certain, picked up the words, but all the other words within the same sentences that you calculate the correlation. And this correlation network determines, what the next one is, and then what's this other point of the word is. So this correlation matrix, not just a prediction or correlation of the next word, is the differences. Element network is just predicting the next word is coming, so that the correlation is this word with other words. But this one is, every word-to-word correlation within the same sentences. That's a huge differences. And then also you two-way compression of these words that you can get sort of a meaning that you can deal with this network. And the GPT-3 is based on this transformer network with 5 trillion and corpuses, and then it says 1.95 million parameters, which is the number of weights within the network. That's what people know. So based on this one, we have a large language model, right? And then I was wondering, okay, why don't you just use this one to create behavior with my Android? Because it's much easier, right? So we don't know how to do this. Because that's why I used Android to mimic humans' behavior, so that you can always learn how to behave from the human being in front of you, right? But if you can use language, it's much easier. So that's why I started to use this one. But of course, we don't know how to train them, right? So we just connect ChatGPT with the API to the Android. Then I tell him, take a selfie. Yeah, that's what we did the first time, right? So he did. So I was so surprised. Okay, so why he knows how to do this, right? Because he like do this, and then, yeah. Then I was more surprised when I told him, pretend a ghost behavior. So this one, so we didn't tell him anything, right? But we just, a coupling with a large language model, and then just told him, take a selfie or pretend a ghost, right? And then next one is, yeah, there are a bunch of things that we can do, but just drink some tea. Sorry, this one is, yeah, this is, yeah. It's not a proper way of drinking tea, but you can tell that he's drinking tea, right? And then also throwable is then. So you have to notice that here that this is a zero-shot learning, right? We didn't, pre-train or anything. We just tell him, just do it, and he could do it, right? And then, so how to do this is two ways. So first of all, we prepared two prompts. You know that the large language model is controlled by the prompt, right? Then when we say, let's take a selfie with your iPhone, then the prompt one is here, the showing enthusiasm about taking a selfie, several exaggerated emotions below, so that we let LLM to ChatGPT to generate almost about 10 description of the behaviors. So once we say selfie, and then ChatGPT must decompose the sentence into 10 description with some exaggerated expressions. Okay, that's the important point. Then this one is put into the prompt 2, and then prompt 2 is this creating the actual, set axis. So as I said, Android has 43 axes, right? And each axis has to have a number from 0 to 255. Then he, translate the number, those expressions into those numbers. So first one is create wide-eyed facial expressions of the excitement and anticipation. Then all the axes should be like this. That's what he had created. Okay, that's how the prompt 2 did. And so this is more explicit prompt that we use. So first of all, the blue one is the explanation of what LLM has to do. So explaining your task is to describe exaggerated emotional expressions and facial expressions that accompany with the content of the conversation. That's what we have to tell him. Then we have to put some examples, like this one is drink some tea, then you have to do this, right? So these are the examples that we have to show him, right? Then here's the guideline that we have to put. So, so output should be the list, or write as much detail as possible. Well, all these are the guidelines. Maybe there's a better way to do this, but that's what we use. Okay.
I like to make sure that's kind of decompose the sentences, like a drink some tea, severals and promotion.
Yes.
Create a perception,
yeah.
facial expression. Yeah. These are automatically generated. Right?
Yes.
You are not programming.
No. So drink some tea, you just put this prompt, then describe this one sentence with a 10 different list. Then the ChatGPT can generate all these 10 sentences. Not always 10, but yeah.
But then the question is, how can you, for example, lift and tilt? But at least Android should know some basic correspondence between behavior, like left arm moves up, but which one is left arm? Android.
Well, yes. So yeah, so the prompt 1 and prompt 2, but also we imported the 43 sentences, which is axis 1 is your shoulder. So once you put the numbers there, then your shoulder moves this way or the other way, right? And axis 2 is your left hand and this finger, so that once you put the number here, then your finger is going this way. That's what I have to explain.
So these basic definition of the limb and each part of the limb, arm or head, those things, and yeah, so those are basically provided. Then after that, all the things is generated.
Yes, yes. Well, I can learn the program right now because yeah, I think I have somewhere. Yep. So for example, yeah. So this one is connected. Yeah. So first of all, I don't know whether yeah, I have to explain long chain, but yeah, yeah. So yeah. So this prompt 2 that we have to explain that axis 1 to axis 43, that axis, for example, axis 7 is related to the lips. A value of 255 puckers the lips as if preparing to kiss. A value of 0 relaxes the lips. A value of 0 is the initial position. That we have to describe, okay? So maybe there are better way to describe each axis, but that's, we just arbitrarily, discussing with people, and then maybe this one can handle, yes. Well, we did just, yeah. So that's why I'm saying that maybe there are better way of using those numbers.
This is kind of technology also capable of reading in all the scripts that you're using to program the robot directly.
Yeah.
You could say, here are all the files that are recording our robot. What would be the best?
Oh, so the robot can choose. Yeah, maybe that's possible. Yes. So yeah, that's also possible that we can do this. Yeah. Yeah.
So you also provide a few examples.
Yes, that's basic. That's very necessary that we have to put 2 or 3 examples so that the author knows how to, LLM knows how to generate. Yes. The example is, I think it's 2 is enough to generate for this case. Yeah.
So you mean, for example, like a play tennis or those just 2, and suddenly you ask the author to do the pretending.
Yes. That's why I think it's why I was so surprised. Yeah. Yeah, only 2 examples that is necessary to generate everything.
So why those 2 examples are important?
You mean why not 3 or 5?
No. I feel that just basic description might be enough, but how 2 examples helps? Why these 2 examples?
Well, so there's still some mysteries. For example, like why we have 2 prompts, right? Because we can connect them together. That's much easier. However, once we separate part 1 and part 2, then the behavior is much better. If we don't do this, then everything is just doesn't work. Yes. So usually the people say this, right? So this is the model input. So the first one is, Roger has 5 tennis balls and he buys 2 more cans of tennis balls, and each can has 3 tennis balls. How many tennis balls does he has now? Right? The answer is 11. Then the cafeteria had 23 apples, and then if they use 20 to make lunch and bought 6 more, how many apples do they have? And the answer is 27 is wrong, right? Yes. Yeah.
Is there a reason why those are not much cleaner? In this case, you can specifically give instructions.
I mean, well, if I understand your question correctly, I mean, if you use the natural language to how you move your hands, it's I mean, the description was like, 0 input to axis 7 is like a kissing others, right? So it doesn't like engineering input. So for example, like 1 year ago, Google and then other people used their robot to do a TD learning. And then in that case, they actually put so many precise numbers so that they trained a lot so that the robot can move precisely. But this one is never use any numbers or anything, but just natural numbers. For example, this one is for the model input, Roger started with 5 balls and 2 cans of 3 tennis balls, each is 6 tennis balls, and 6 plus 7 equals 6 plus 5 equals 11. That's the answer is 11. So this sentence, people think it's redundant, right? Because the answer is 11 is, well, maybe some people think it's enough. However, put this one, then the large language model can give you the right answer, right? This is what we call chain of thought. The paper was published this January, right? Once you nicely, decompose the answer and then put some relevant examples, then large language model can give you a right answer. Okay, so it's very important how you separate the prompt into 2 or 3. Yes. The program, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. This is one. This is one. And it looks like this is like some description is like talking about the actual motion command, but some motion is described as a usual, natural.
Yeah.
The meaning of the something like having some. So in this case, like how to say? So actually, in this process of the prompt, the language model actually interferes the latent meaning of the action, and then even it's not written in the very precise way. For instance, kissing and also drinking, kind of similar. That's why they actually can connect.
Right.
I see. Thank you so much.
I think so. Yeah. Actually, this description is because I have a postdoc from UK. I is Michael, and I said, "Hey, Michael, how to describe this behavior?" And he gave me some hint. He gave me some hint. How to describe this muscles here, or, So I think it's a UK bias, and also there might be some very better description of it. I think so. Yeah. So we still don't know some of them how to have an optimal description of it, right? But for example, like one of the things that I thought was interesting is that it's so stupid that once when I was reading some article in front of him, and he just says, this is something quite strange, right? So I want him to behave, nicely when I read some papers. So this type is when I was giving a joke, right? And this is like a sad story, and then how he behaves differently, right? I don't know whether he actually enjoys this one, but that's what he behaved. And this is when I gave a sad story. I thought it was really strange, but my student said, oh, this is perfect. So maybe the way that you feel it's different, But so in a case that somebody asked me that maybe there are better way of describing. This one is playing the metal music with the guitar, right? So these are the descriptions that generated by the large language model, and then so actually. Well, I didn't think it was good, but Like he said, it's perfect. But then, yeah, we did in this case that. So this is much better, right? So we didn't do any fine tuning, but we just told him, okay, you have to move your hands much quickly. And then this natural, describe and then how to change your behavior, that works. So we don't need any sort of fine tuning, but we just tell him, I don't know, I don't want to do this, but you have to move fingers in this way. And then he just, changes the behavior. Right. So it's the very important thing is that what you have to do is just tell him with your language and don't have to use any numbers or anything. Yeah, that's what I sort of was interested.
It's not real time, right?
This is real time.
You tell him real
Yeah.
voice record.
Yes. Yeah, he's here and there's a microphone that yeah. So I think it's nice. Then most of the tasks were achieved by the zero-shot learning. And instead of fine-tuning separate language model checkpoint for each new task, one can simply, prompt the model with a few input and output exemplifiers, demonstrating the task, and you can, directly tell him what to do. Right. So this is like pretending the ghost. It's output from the prompt 1, prompt 2, and then that's how the ghost's behavior came out.
Use camera and voice, like with your hand like this.
No. We just but the large language model cannot still understand images, right? As far as I know. But the people say at the end of this year, the chat GPT-5 will come out, and then with the video input. So maybe that So these are the sort of the description of the reading book, and then it's very natural behavior that is put into this file. Then, for example, like a sentence, right? In the Paracadized joke, the words seem to be narrate an ancient tale of survivors, each football echoing eons of existence. And then the chat GPT decomposed this one into 8 sentences by the prompt 1. Then this one is put into the prompt 2, then generate the behavior as we did, okay? So this is, well, I like this one a lot, but depends on how. I'm very much sympathetic with his behavior, but that's what happens, through the prompt 1 and 2. Okay. Some other cases that, I was. There's a bunch of questions from people that, for example, like this one is. Let him mimicking the snake's behavior, right? So it's not the human behavior, but he can mimic it. And then we know that looks like he's mimicking. So that's, I thought was interesting because it's not only human behavior, but other animals' behavior that he can mimic by the language. And also, this one is, when my student told him that I will kill you, then that's what he responded. So he knows what does it mean by killing, or being killed. So I think the huge corpus is not just a word, but it's but embedded the cultural complexity and the relationship between humans. That's and also like rituals in our culture, and also not only the human beings' behavior, but it's another animal that we see and then written in the books. That's also possible that this android can mimic by giving the large language models prompt. Yeah. Then, so because today it's invited by John Tani, I was already thought about the self, right? There's a long-term discussion with John about what is the minimal self and what is the narrative self. And simply speaking, the minimal self is it's a basic something. It's a quite core thing, right? This is coming from Sean Gallagher. That he gave this definition, right? The minimal self, and he said it's something primitive and then self-devoid of temporal extensions, right? So it's there like a universal something, and then employing a modified concept of the minimal self, it may be possible to construct a robotic form of non-consciousness. That's what Jun did with his robot, and so that the self-reference that depends on the interaction between the robotic body and its environment. So the robot is moving and then touching something and going this. That's what the minimal self is about, right? But on the other hand, the narrative self involves the continuity over time and directly relevant to the discussions of memory and the personal, which I thought was quite important, right? Personal identity. The narrative self is extended in time to include memories of the past and the intentions towards the future. So now the self is not just a point, but it's extended into time, like past and future. So that temporal and spatially extended one is what we want to define as a self. So self is not just embody, enclosed in a body, but it's more like an extended one. So that the self's rich amalgam of narratives that allows for the equivocations and contradictions and self-deceptions of personal life. That's what he says, which I was I was so much, sympathetic with this definition. But the point is, how we can make it with a robot, how we can, make a robot have the narrative self. It's very difficult because the robot usually doesn't have any personal life, doesn't have any cultural interaction with other robots or other human beings, or doesn't have any sort of a lifetime memory. So the narrative self is almost impossible. But there's only one way to do this. Of course, a large language model has a huge memories and experiences. So coupling with a large language model might make it possible to have a narrative self to the robot. That's the idea that we started to do this. I know that John has a lot of arguments against this, but that's what we have studied. Also, John's review paper discussed a lot about what's this narrative self versus a minimal self. And my understanding is that there's a bunch of narratives like what others says about me, or narrative of being a sports fanatic, or narrative of being a teacher. Or there's a bunch of narratives about me, and then the self is coming like a center of gravity, right? Or maybe there's a bunch of those elements is floating around, so that there's no like such things like a central part, but it's more like a network of a bunch of different types of narratives is making a self, which is a narrative self. I don't know which one is right or which one is wrong, but this is sort of I think, I don't know, maybe it's commonly believed idea of narrative self, which is initially given by the Ricoeur, the philosopher. Then one of my favorite brain scientists is Gazzaniga. Michael Gazzaniga is he said it's found throughout the living nature that it's not something sufficient for the purpose of the coherent continuity or identity over time on the level of human experiences. We humans, however, do have something more than this. We have a language. That's what he says, right? And with the language, we begin to make our experiences relatively coherent over extended time periods. So language can help us to have narrative self, I think. And then we begin to use words to tell stories, and in these stories that we create what we call ourselves, and we extend our biological boundaries to encompass a life of meaningful experiences. That's what the Gazzaniga's idea. Then the brain is not just a center of narrative is in there, right? It's more like different types of personalities exist and coexisting and making a network. That is what we call a self, is what I understand from him. And this is what he calls it, social brain, or maybe it's the network of the mind is what governing the ideas about the brain. So, and then also, like Billy Milligan's 24 personalities. It's an interesting science. It's not a science fiction, but it's the real story that Billy Milligan has 23 personalities inside him. And then the main one, when he came out, he tried to commit a suicide. So we have to keep him suppressed. And the other 23 personalities is interesting with each other. That's I vaguely remember his book. And yeah, so that's my favorite book. But then I think this year also, right? The paper came out from Google that the generative agents Google plus Stanford University, the people are studying language chain agent, which is interactive simulation of human behavior. I thought this paper was very difficult to read. Maybe I don't think it's not only me, but because it's using some different words, and then they try to imitate. I mean, using based on some sort of simulation game, and try to imitate 25 people in everyday life interacting with each other, and then what's the natural, very much human-like behavior and human-like everyday life is happening. That's what they want to simulate. But in order to do that, ChatGPT is not good enough. That's what they say, and they need a memory stream. So they need a memory that what they say and what they retrieve must be, referring to the memory tank. That's what the paper talks about. So once you retrieve from the memory stream, and then those retrieved memories putting again into the memory stream, and then also the planning of what to do next day, it's also depending on the memory stream and then retrieval from the memories. Which, yeah, I think it's missing from the just ChatGPT things. But once you use this language chain agent, that becomes possible. And then one of the things that the people are discussing, I mean, from this paper is that first there's 25 people agents, right? And then the human programmer told one of the agents that this is a St. Valentine's Day or something. Then several days after that, the people get together and then having a St. Valentine's Day party, right? So the party is self-organized. Sounds a bit strange, but that's what the main, message from this. You don't have to set up the party, but it's autonomously or spontaneously, the party was planned and then happened in this world. So usually, I think it is very difficult, in the long term of our, high dimensional dynamical systems modeling, you're gonna have like a coherent behavior or synchronizing behavior, but it's difficult to have a party in the world, because I mean, sounds like stupid, but we don't have the theory of meaning. That's why we only have the syntaxes, and we don't have the theory, or we don't have the semantics still. That's why we cannot do that kind of simulation. But this one is possible. And then simply speaking, the language chain is like a library or the platform, or it's a framework or a bunch of libraries. Well, so what we have to do is just, import language chain and then using like agents or memories and things. That's how we can use the language chain in your model, right? In your large language model. So it's not just using language model, but the language chain is very useful to make applications and other things. So now, this is the final part. So now that we think I prepared six personalities within the brain, right? Like I said, Gazzaniga said there are a bunch of different personalities. So we prepared 6 personalities. The first one is, of course, is physicist. That we need a physicist somewhere, and then chemist, programmers, poet, artist, and then 10 years old girl. I don't know, but that's my student selected. Then each one is defined in this way. Like Xiao is generative agent is the way it's from the long chain, one of the library that we can use it. Then name is Xiao, and then age is 50, and trait is woman, ADHD, studied about the collective behaviors. Right? It's not about me, but that's what we described. And then status is physicist. Then also the Xiao's observation that what he did basically is, but this one is also generated, of course, by the chat GPT. Like Xiao is departing from the traditional physics lab, and I came to Japan to research dynamical systems of the herd behavior, focusing on the bees and human beings. So this one is created by the chat GPT, right? So put in there. Also, the other one, like Amin is like a robot engineer. Then we describe it, right? And a chemist, and like she's a poet. And then, so in this way that we can put the personalities to the agent, right? So we initiated this conversation by myself that what are you talking about? And please tell me your topic. Then the like started to talk about, we're discussing the integration of AI with the various art forms, and this is a conversation that is started, okay? So, so one of our obsession in artificial life is how to make an open-ended evolution, right? So usually the conversation stops. Like, two androids is try to, develop many different variety of patterns, but still they come to the simple behaviors, right? So how to make a complex behavior without pervaded from without is something that we want to understand. And then I was wondering, maybe we put the 6 personalities inside the brain, then this author, coupling with author, that the author is, endlessly saying something and behaving something. That's what we want to see. So how much time do we have? Oh, we have to stop. Okay, sorry. So 6 persons, right? And then through this GPT-4, and then searching keys and using the memory retrieval, then putting author, and then there's a human that author and the human is interacting with each other. But the author is not only one personalities. Those are 6 personalities is, talking to each other, and then one of the personality is popping up and then try to interact with the human. That's the idea. That's what I have. So the multi-personality is this very much essential of the human personalities. So yeah, it's okay. Then we try to. So this is how they start to talk to each other. So the Tyrell is talking to like this. I indeed let the owner of AI is marked by compassion and creativity, and then Julia said something, and Samantha said something, and Tara said again something, right? And then in between, that human is perturbating the conversation. That's first of all that I said, hey, what do you want to do? And then also, what are you talking about? Please tell me your topic. Well, this kind of intervention is also possible. But the problem, so I did some sentiment analysis of this conversation, right? So until like 300 rounds, yeah. So the blue one is a priority, means that +1 is more it's more positive, and then minus is negative. But seems like this agent, all the agent is very positive. So the personality is very positive. I mean, that's not directly given by us, but it's as a result that becomes so positive personalities. So the personality is the outcome of interaction between those 6 agents. And then the other one is subjectivity. whether they are talking about more general things or more personal things. And looks like, they started talking more about, more objective informations until here, but then they start to talk more about subjective things. I don't say that Orta suddenly becomes more narrative self. It's not true. It's more, that's what I thought. If it's true, that's very interesting, right? After like 300, conversations with each other, then finally Orta has a narrative self, which is a very success story. But what happens is, this is another a sentiment analysis of action. And then what happens is that word crowd analysis is that first of all, they are talking about the dance on earth, then talking about the culture, but then good night and I don't know about visionaries, but the good night or something. And also its action is they first of all talk about the dance and discussion, but then becomes good night. So unfortunately, there is a big attractor, which is we call a goodbye attractor. The finally, they always talking about the goodbye. They try to, go home, right? so Orta didn't get, narrative self, but their personality is try to say goodbye to each other. So that's why this subjectivity, is going up. And then, so when this one happens is quite interestingly, so this is also a sentiment analysis of action. Oh, by the way, I said, this is what this agent says and what this agent's behavior is, right? So the action part and then speech part. So I analyze both parts, speech part and then action part. So this is the action part analysis. And then score is going, so its action is also positive, but here it becomes very neutral, right? So when it becomes neutral is around 250 rounds or something. And then human invention by me is around here. So once you stop, intervene by human, then the system becomes neutral. So the emotional feeling or positive feeling is suppressed, and then becomes like a artificial agent. Then just stop. Then they start to say goodbye to each other. But before that, once when I try to intervene the communication, then they have some more emotional and interesting conversation was going on there. So the goodbye attractor was after I didn't intervene the conversation, and after 100 rounds, they start to falling down to the boring attractors. So my understanding is we still need human intervention is necessary for the person to be, continuously active and an interesting personality to maintain. So homeostatic personality is coming out by interacting with other humans. So we need a society first. So that's another thing that I've been working on. But society is necessary to have an interesting and then very active self. It's if you are by yourself, and then your brain goes to a goodbye attractor. So that's what, my message from here. Yes.
Because GPT-4 is closed box, you don't know how many biases and filters are the conversation are going through. So you don't know if the results are actually just an artifact of that.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So so when say goodbye, then they have to stop it, right? So it's an artifact of the.
Or it's something. It's going to respect something that has the sentiment analysis is negative, and it's probably not going to output that because there's so many filters.
Yeah.
So
that's one thing. So as he said, it's a human. So many constraints. It's increasing, every day, right? So maybe we have to use like a llama to implement everything, and then copying into here is maybe necessary. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, super fascinating work, Takashi. I think it's really opening up some new perspectives. It's fascinating how fast this is happening. It's crazy. So I'm interested in resets, and I think this goodbye attractor could be a signal that they actually need a reset in order to continue an interesting conversation. So it would be interesting to allow them to have it somehow, that if they move into this attractor, you can say, okay, everybody have a break. Everybody has a 5-minute break, come back in 5 minutes or something like that, which then allows them to kind of go through like a reset of the conversation. And if it's like that, then it's almost like, the natural need for pauses and breaks and social interactions that we all feel. I mean, you can't talk with the same person endlessly, right? You sometimes need to kind of like have a break and then re-engage. If that's something that they need too, that's very interesting, right? Then it's something intrinsic to the complexity and open-ended communication potentially. Even like something like sleep, right? So if they say like, good night, what they're saying there, right? Which is really interesting that they themselves, in order to continue this task, might actually have to have a wake sleep cycle themselves.
That's nice interpretation. Yeah.
Yeah. So you should allow them to have a sleep, right? And then say, if everybody says good
sorry
night,
about that. Yes.
say, guys, you did a good job. Come back like the next day.
Yes. Oh, actually, thank you so much for the nice comment. Well, sometimes they try to get out spontaneously from this goodbye attractor and making some but it's not so interesting, but it's eventually going back. But it's not, like a rigid attractor. But sometimes you can, hopping out, but then eventually coming back. But maybe you're right. So it's like a sleeping things is a necessary, result.
And it's the same kind of pattern that you have for the thought sequences. If it's all in one, it doesn't work very well. So you have to break it into chunks, right?
Yes.
And so it's for communication, it's the same thing. You have to break it into chunks. And if you don't allow them to do the break,
maybe
then it will not be working as effectively.
Are there any, so you finished the talk first?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes.
Okay, so then are there any questions? And then please use the microphone. Yeah, Kasahara-san.
Thank you. So also the connecting to the goodbye attractor things, and then I'm very fascinated about the party things, the Valentine party things. I have a question. So in that kind of simulation in the computer simulation, is any notion of the time inside this simulation?
Oh, that's also quite interesting because the narrative self. Once we have to discuss this, each agent must have a kind of sense of time, right? And then in their paper, the people from the University of Stanford and Google people, that they have a clock inside, but it's given by the programmer. They couldn't make it, like emergent phenomena. And then we also, actually, Jun asked me whether if I ask him which event was, closer to now. I mean, was this one was yesterday or the before yesterday? We can ask this kind of question. And then this world for this agent, 1 hour is just 1 day. So maybe there are a way that they could organize a sense of time. Then this memory can be older than this memory, or this kind of comparison can be possible one day. But we haven't analyzed that yet.
I see. Since like this simulation settings, we can also computationally, we can speed up very, very fast time, maybe 10,000 times by usual times, and we can simulate kind of how humanity goes where after the 10 years, 1,000 years, something. And we can also do like some parallel simulation at the same time and choosing one pick the best way scenario, something. So then in that case, maybe like this kind of narrative sense of time matters. And then some people sometimes in the simulation got to the goodbye attractor or something. So that was kind of my impression. So super interesting.
I see. Thank you.
So any other questions? So can I ask,
Yes.
I'm still not get it in the very end part. So are you assuming that the human brain has a multiple personality as a default? So my mind is consists of a musician or chemistry as those people, even though I don't notice it, but that you think.
But that's what social brain is about, no? Well, so it's not just a one talent that you have, but it's a different, personality, different talent.
So you mean that sometime I like play tennis, So yeah, tennis player, but they're not professional, right? So sometimes I'm a researcher. Sometimes I'm talking with my wife. But that is the same thing, right? But you are talking about a really completely different personality, coexists in our brain.
But I don't know whether you can say completely different, because once they start to communicating with each other, right? Their memories are sort of becoming very similar to each other, right? And sometimes different, but sometimes quite similar. And they are stored in the memory tank. And then there's a decaying factor, it's 0.9. So it's gradually decaying out, the memory is, right? So the new memory might be quite similar or common to each other. So that even if you say initially they're set up a very different, characters.
So that is a group of people initially very different, but is everyday conversation and becoming
in your own brain. Okay.
Okay, I understand.
Does it mean in your simulation you not only simulate the, in this case, agent-to-agent communication, you also simulate a self communication between those different personalities? So do you have a phase where you say, okay, now this agent that you simulate in one brain would talk to each other to kind of form, I don't know, some common self? And then you have this phase where maybe one of these agents takes over and communicates maybe with the outside world or something like this, or?
Yeah, I think it was a very simple idea, right? There are six personalities, right, in communicating with each other, right? So as an average, or you can have a single personality from when you observe from the outside, right? But actually, what happens is there are 6 agents talking to each other. But it's this can be the average, or this can be randomly picking up one person. I was looking into the articles that when there's a multiple personality patient exists, right? But I don't know which one is going to be selected, or which personality is popping up when and what kind of context. But there's no rigid report for that, so I don't know how to do this. But maybe this average personality, or picking up one of the personality, will become your personality, right? To the people observing from outside, I think. So that's what I discuss here. Do you think it's very strange?
I don't know. So, but it's kind of like so it's kind of like a hierarchical thing, almost like you have like yourself that is basically also forming by like some, let's say, majority voting or things like this. But actually, I'm not so familiar with really like a real cases, like when one could look into some patients also that have deficits in this kind of system. So when you say maybe some people have maybe some behavior that takes over, and they try to suppress like maybe a bad behavior or something. But basically, this kind of agent, they lose maybe control of balancing or something like this. In a sense, yeah. But
but because I'm almost researching like a collectives of microbes and collectives of animals, right? But the evolution of individuality of each cell, it's not predefined and then it never changes forever. Because of this collectives and interacting with each other, this individuality is determined afterwards. So I think interaction is very important. And also the community comes first, and then individuality is evolving from the community. That's something that I thought was, so why not the brain system is, 10 billion, 100 billion cells interacting with each other, right? So the individuality evolving from it, not given from the beginning. I think that's why I thought was.
Okay, yeah, I see the point. So also like, I mean, I'm not aware of any really application of this, but I'm also aware like of this view of the brain, or at least on the, not on the cells, more on the neuron itself, on the brain, where you say like, you see each individual neuron in the brain as an individual individuum that tries to maybe maximize its information gain, try to grow or build synapses or whatever connections to other regions to have a like a own optimization function inside or something like this.
Yeah.
So any other question? Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation. To check my understanding, were you saying that with these 6 agents, you intervened and then the output became more neutral? Is that what happened?
No. While I'm intervening the system, the communication is very rich and complex. But once I stop doing this,
yes,
then the community is
it drops
shrinking,
neutral.
and it becomes neutral.
Okay.
So yes.
Sorry, Karen. And what kind of intervention is this? Is this like a disruption in the system, or is this like a meaningful like addition to conversation, for example? And are there any differences between
intervention is like this.
Uh-huh.
So I think this is normal, right? I mean, tell me about the topic, or
Okay. And do they respond to just disruptions, these 6 agents? So put like, a word in, or a symbol or something. Well, not a symbol, but like a string of numbers.
Okay, so we can check that.
Okay.
I haven't, After this, so I could look into the data sets and see how we responding to this. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
There is no need a strategy for mitigation without that means
Yeah. Because you have to retrieve from the memory, and then you perform the behavior, right? But then again, you have to memorize it. But once you memorize the behavior, there's a neural noise is coming into the system. That's what our robot is. So that once you retrieve, the memory is always buried a little bit. So more you retrieve the memory, more the pattern is going to be different. That's the idea. Yes. Yeah.
So at this point, you think you could say that how was capable to really reach.
Do you know what?
The outlet rate really reach across the
That's a very hard question, right? And then of course, I don't know it, right? When I was talking with the author, I don't think he's conscious or he has a mind. It's more like like a speech box still, right? But when I saw like this, like when I said I kill you, and then he does this. This kind of reaction is very interesting, and then we didn't expect that he's going to do that, right? So this unexpectedness, as like a micro surprise, is accumulating, and then probably establishing some trustfulness or belief that maybe this guy has some mind or something, right? So this so always the author must keep micro surprise to me, unexpectedness, and that is very important. That's why I think 6 agents within the brain must keep creating something new, which we call open-endedness, and this open-endedness is necessary for the artificial system to interact with other, for example, like a living system, to make a surprise, and this micro surprise, is necessary to establish some very important communication link between living systems and non-living systems. I think I still cannot, nicely put in some nice way, but I think it is necessary that what is unexpectedness and what is surprise, micro surprise that is, makes it possible for us to, accept artificial agent to our community. So that's to me, it's about AI alignment and then how to accept artificial complex systems into our community things. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
very
I
much
think
for-
regarding this question, I think that this order 3 system will pass the Turing test, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
But it's a large-
like this
yeah.
is human, so like that's part. But the question is that how is the internal mechanism really analogous to the human brain is another story, right? So
Yeah, sure.
I think Kasahara-san, but first I think so now officially this seminar finished, but if somebody wants to continue discussion, then you can stay here. So yeah, so
Well,
that's I do.
but thank you very much for coming.
like
Yeah.
first,